Welcome to the Inconceivably Connected podcast. I'm your host and fellow donor-conceived person, Nick Ludwig. On this week's episode, I sat with Erin Maya from Jersey City, New Jersey. As a writer, singer, and performer, Erin decided to put her musical talents to work after discovering she's donor-conceived by producing, well, a musical. A rock musical, to be exact. Titled The Complete Picture, Erin has creatively brought to life and sparked conversation around the complex feelings and emotions that being donor-conceived often brings us. Since the idea for The Complete Picture spawned in 2019, she has since had sold-out performances across venues in New York City, as well as a successful workshop presentation in front of a packed house at Texas State University. I'm always eager to learn more about the thought processes of those who use these life experiences as fuel for creative projects. There's no shortage of ways to process the shock of what DCPs experience, but as I know very well myself, sometimes there are rewards to be yielded that we never expected. Let's hear from Erin herself as she offers a glimpse into her own story and how the complete picture came to be.
Hi, my name is Erin Maya, and I am located in Jersey City. And I suppose my story begins, like most donor-conceived stories, before I was born, what was going on before I was born, which was that my parents were struggling with my father got cancer when they got engaged. And so they were struggling with a lot of his health. They were really young. They didn't listen to doctors' advice when they said, it's probably advisable to freeze sperm because chemotherapy can sometimes make men infertile. They were raised Catholic, so they listened to a priest instead, which didn't turn out so great. So when it was time to, when my father was in remission and healthier, it was time to have kids. They found themselves in a position where they were struggling and they couldn't have kids. And it turned out that my dad was infertile, and because of the chemotherapy, he couldn't have kids. And so they talked to a younger, much cooler priest, and they told him how much they wanted to have a child and how the church felt about this thing called donor conception. And the young priest was like, are you going to raise your kids in the church, as a Catholic priest would ask? And basically like, if you're going to love this child, you should go for it. So they moved forward with it. But back when I was conceived in the 80s, it was still an incredibly taboo subject. In many ways, it still is taboo, but back then, way even more so. And basically, they found a doctor in New York, and the doctor said to them, I know that you're Catholic, and so instead of you guys choosing a donor, I'm just going to choose a donor just like your husband. This way you don't feel like you're playing God or anything. We will do the procedure, and then you just go along your merry way. And if you end up getting pregnant, you can just assume that it's your husband's and everybody moves on, that kind of thing. But then I was born, and my parents both are Irish with blue eyes, and I came out with my brown eyes and my dark features. And I always joke around and say that if I had actually paid attention in science class, maybe I would have caught on sooner that I was donor conceived, because two blue-eyed parents cannot make a brown-eyed kid. But anyway, all of that to be said, it definitely, even as a child, I was very aware that I looked a little different. My brother, he's 3 years younger than me. They also used donor conception for him, but they actually ended up choosing the donor for him. And so my brother has, bright blue eyes, just like my parents. Anyway, so unfortunately, my dad's health kept taking a turn for the worse again, and the cancer did come back. He went through a ton of health issues my whole childhood, and he ended up passing when I was in sixth grade, when I was 11 years old. And just 3 years later, I was sitting with my mom one day and I was telling her I used to get so pissed because people have such big mouths, they don't think before they speak, and kind of and people always used to make comments about how me and my brother didn't look anything alike, and it really bothered me. And it really bothered me especially because just being part of an Irish family, I always did feel kind of like the black sheep, the one who like stood out. So it bothered me when people would point out that me and my brother didn't look alike. And this one particular day, this woman had pointed that out, and I was really upset. And for whatever reason, my mom decided that day to be honest with me, and she was like, "Well, you know that your dad was sick, and we couldn't have kids, so we ended up using a donor." And I had never even heard of the term donor conception before, which I think is a normal thing. Most people, when I bring up the topic, I mean, maybe they've heard of donor conception, but they've definitely not heard of a donor conceived person before, which I always find very interesting. It's like once the baby is made, we all forget about this thing. You know what I mean? Or like I'll say, yeah, I'm a donor conceived person, and people will be like, what's that? And I'm like, well, if you break the word down, I was conceived from a donor. Um, so anyway, so my mom told me this news, and it was obviously shocking, completely shocking. But there was part of me that felt like a release because because it finally gave a reason to why I felt so different. And so the first question I had was, okay, so like what's my ethnic background? And she was like, I don't know. We used an anonymous donor. They just said we would use an Irish one. And I was like, well, I don't think that worked out. Um, but anyway, my mom had no information whatsoever. And I mean, when I look back, now that I'm in my late 30s, and I'm hoping to have a child of my own at some point in the next few years, um, just looking back at where we were at and what my parents went through, my dad had just died when she told me this information 3 years prior. So I was grieving, she was grieving. I understand now why she felt like she wanted to almost like protect my dad's legacy, and I didn't really want to nitpick too much into it. There really was no way to find any information anyway. Like there was no commercial DNA testings back then, no 23andMe ancestry, none of that. And so there really was no way for me to get information, and so it just basically became something that I just had to move on and pretend like it didn't happen. But I had this secret, and I knew that none of my family members knew, and no one knew about this. Um, and so it just kind of like festered inside of me and ate away at me. And I like think about how everyone is so angsty as a teenager as it is, but this like extra layer, I think that it was definitely rough. And I struggled a lot with it, and I definitely felt like I was like half question mark, and I didn't really know like what to do about that, and just kind of went along my way, holding this secret. And I feel like when you're a donor conceived person and you're expected to hold this kind of a secret, when you don't have any information about yourself, I feel like it's really hard to stand tall in the world and like take ownership of your space in the world, just as a human being. But then also layered on top of that, I was an actress and vocalist, and I'm in the arts. And so part of my job as a performer, in order to get work and book work, you need to audition for work. And so um, it really started to eat away at me and get to me once I went to school for theater. And um, the topic of like, what is your type, kept coming up. And like technically, legally, nobody's supposed to ask you what your ethnic background is, but it comes up. And it just kept coming up for me. And I found that like when I would enter a space, instead of owning the space and being open and open to share myself, I would walk into a space and like on the inside feel like, oh God, please don't look at me. Please don't look too hard. I don't know the answer. Don't ask any questions. Um, and so, yeah, so it really started to impact me the older and older that I got. And then when I turned 30 years old, it finally got to a point where I was like, I don't feel like I can move forward as a person, as a performer. I feel like I have to get to the bottom of this and get some answers for myself to grow as a person. And also at that time in the entertainment industry, finally people were calling out like whitewashed casting and things like that, um, rightfully so. And so it became like a period in the industry where, you know, somebody like me, it was really frightening because I was like, I don't know where I belong. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm just going to duck out of here. And that's basically what I did. I kind of stepped away from auditioning because the last thing I wanted was to like book work. And often I would get called in for Latina roles. And I was always very like open with my cast. Whenever I was in a cast, a Latina cast, I always say, you know, I have no idea what half of me is. I'm Irish. I know that much. And then they'd be like, you're not just Irish, but yeah, it just got to a point where I felt uncomfortable because I didn't know where it was appropriate for me to be, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so I finally took a DNA test, and it came back, 63% Iberian Peninsula. Could be Spain, Venezuela, Portugal, like whole list. And I was like, oh, wait, am I allowed to curse on this podcast?
You could say whatever you want. Yeah,
you're good. Wow, I was being really formal. Okay, now we're about to get good. No, I was just like, oh shit, I am Latino or Hispanic. I wasn't sure yet. I wasn't sure where I was from, but I was like, Iberian Peninsula, we're onto something here. And so I looked at my matches and I found a second cousin, and she happened to live in Brooklyn, and there was a photo of her. And it was the first time in my life I ever saw someone with my eyes. And it was like, to this day, it's still like a moment that I will never forget, like where it felt like time stopped, because just seeing her eyes was like healing in a way for me. And so I reached out to her, and she was kind enough to meet me for dinner, and we met. She had me meet her at a Cuban restaurant, and I got there, and she was like, hey, like we're Cuban as fuck. And I was like, what? And so I ended up learning that I was Cuban by way of Spain. So that's where Iberian Peninsula came from. And yeah, and she was just really kind and gave me as much information as she could give me. But, you know, she didn't have the answers as to, you know, who the donor was or anything like that. Yeah, but she gave me just enough information to kind of set me off on this investigative journey, because as soon as I found out what my ethnic background was, I thought that would be enough for me to feel at peace. But it was like you open Pandora's box, and then I was like, all right, now I gotta find this guy. And I honestly hadn't even like dared to think about that or go there in my mind in my teens and my 20s once I learned I was donor conceived. I think because I was grieving my dad, and there was this part of me that didn't want to disrespect his memory and didn't want to go there. And I was so focused on like, okay, where do I fit? Like, when somebody asks me, oh, what are you? What's your ethnicity? What's your background? I just want to be able to like have an answer and not like stutter like a fool, or just say, oh, I'm Irish, and then have everybody give me looks, or, you know, it's just always a complicated answer. But as soon as I found the answer to this, it was like, it was not enough. And I was like, I need to know who this person is. And so for the next, oh God, I think it was like 3 years, I was searching for the answer to this and trying to put this puzzle together. And it wasn't until the pandemic I found a family tree going back 3 generations of my paternal side, and I was trying to figure out the math of it all. And my best friend was staying with me during the pandemic. He was quarantining with me, and he's really good at science and math and things of that nature. And he had been with me sort of along on this journey. And during the pandemic, he was like, maybe you're a generation off. And so we started looking through this family tree together, and like there it was, like right in front of my face. Right in front of my face. It couldn't have been like more obvious that there was this guy who had been living in New Jersey, like about like 20 minutes from where I live now. But it said in Spanish, it said that he was a doctor. And as you know, and as most donor conceived people know, a lot of these donors were in med school when they donated.
Right.
And so basically we looked up his name, and then his face immediately popped up, and it was my face, but like a guy. It like exactly my face. Like I will never forget, we literally knocked over a chair. We were like freaking out. um and so yeah, and so I just like did some research, and it seemed that he went to med school 2 blocks away from the clinic that my parents went to. So it was like, oh, this is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But I found his contact information because I did want to get confirmation about this, even though it was pretty obvious. um, and so I took the next couple days to write him, to come up with a letter. Many, many, many drafts, as all of us who have reached out to our donors um, know. It takes a lot of drafts when you write this. It's like the most important letter you'll probably ever send in your entire life. Um, and and yeah, so I just like wrote this letter to him and stressed that I had a father. I'm just looking for an accurate medical history, and like to ask some questions, like for connection. I'm like interested in you. um, and then I just waited, and then a couple days later I got a response back from a person who claimed to be his employee. But actually, I knew from doing my research that it's his sister who like works for him. And I basically got a message from her saying that, like, he received your message, and technology robs well-meaning donors of their deserved anonymity, and he doesn't believe, he's not interested in connecting. um, but because you did your like due diligence to find him, you know, this is, we have rheumatoid arthritis that runs in our family. Like, um, have a great life. Like that was basically it.
Mhm.
And I was just like crushed. Obviously, it was like so dehumanizing in a way. Um, it just made me feel it was so clear. It was like, okay, so um, how he feels matters, and how my parents felt mattered. Like they signed this contract, but like I didn't sign this contract, and this affects my health and my future child's health, our future family's health. Um, and also, it's just not fair. I don't even know how to put it into words. There's just so many complicated layers to it. I was crushed though. And I mean, I can definitely say that also there was that added layer of, I lost my dad when I was really young. And I think that I, I couldn't help but wonder, oh, maybe there's like a chance at connecting with an older male figure. Not He's not going to be like a parent, obviously. I'm an adult, like I don't need a parent. I had a dad. But like, this is a really cool opportunity to maybe have like make a connection with this like older male figure that I share DNA with, that might have like some stories that would help me along my journey, or I don't know, like to me, the way I have always viewed life is that the more love, the better. Like love is not a limited source.
Mm-hmm.
And so my Pisces ass was like, I'm so ready to like welcome more love into my life and more connection, And so I was totally crushed by this letter, and it definitely put me in a funk for a while. But I will say that what I learned from it was that you cannot expect an external factor, another person, to give you peace about yourself, even if they do have certain answers. Like you can't give other people that kind of control, or else like you're just setting yourself up for misery. And so I guess to like rewind a little bit, at one point I started writing this musical called The Complete Picture, which was about a donor conceived person. And it was really important to me. I wanted to write a musical about a donor conceived person because I wrote this song called No More Waiting. Excuse me. No More Waiting. It's my band, Erin Maya and the Reckoning. And people used to ask what this song was about. And I used to sometimes give a little spiel before we would sing it and talk about how I'm a donor conceived person. And I wrote this song about the moment I decided that I needed to find the donor, my biological father, for the answers. And I wrote this song about like that inner struggle that I was dealing with making this decision. And it always sparked so much conversation after shows. Like I would have such interesting conversations with people who had never heard about donor conceived people. They'd never even considered the impact that this would have on a baby once they grow into an actual person of their own, and the kind of issues that they would run into, and like not just medically but like emotionally, and just all of the weight that comes with this. And then they would be shocked that there was like no regulation in the United States, that it literally is like the Wild West out here, and there's more regulation on like breeding dogs, for instance, than there is for breeding humans. So like I loved that this one song was able to like spark all of these conversations, and that was what made me think, oh, what if I wrote a whole musical about this topic as a way to spark these kind of conversations, and not be like, you know, um, hitting people over the head with it, but instead like inviting people into one donor conceived person's world, so that they can go through the experience with them. Because I think that that's something that art does really well.
Okay, quick and abrupt editing pause here. I do want to share one of Erin's songs from the musical. This will not be No More Waiting, the track that has been referenced already, but this will actually be the title track to The Complete Picture. Let's give it a listen. And there you have it. Just wanted to make sure we squeeze that in before continuing the conversation. Let's get back to it.
I think one thing I love about our donor conceived community is the fact that everybody's doing their own activism and advocacy in their own way, based on like what their strengths are. And like, for instance, I would never be good at doing the lobbying. I would never be good with any of the kind of legal portion of this. Is like not my jam at all. And I'm also not the kind of person who's going to have a debate with somebody about something. But for me, I would say like my strength is creating art, and creating art that would spark a conversation, and I like creating art that like gives witness to the unseen and the unheard. I'm really drawn to underdog stories, and I always have been. And I mean, I think that's obviously because I saw myself in those characters. Um, so yeah, so that was basically why I wanted to write The Complete Picture, was to help educate the general public that isn't aware about our issues, but also to make to help donor conceived people feel seen, and to also help them have conversations, initiate conversations with their families and their parents. Um, and it was really important to me for the show to not just have the donor conceived person's perspective, to also be able to give her mom and her dad their moment as well. Basically, just to like, I wanted to try to help and like build a bridge between the donor conceived community and parents, recipient parents, because what I found, being on the forums in my early 30s, I just saw a lot of people, obviously and deservedly so, being really hurt and really angry, and those feelings are completely valid, especially if you've been lied to about your origins, the way so many of us have been. But I would just see on the forums the way like a lot of recipient parents would talk to donor conceived people, and vice versa, and there was like just a lot of animosity, and it felt like a lot of hurt people hurting people. Um, and I wanted to find a way to like to build that bridge, because we should be on the same side. Like the only way any regulation is going to happen in this country is if the consumers, since unfortunately we're in a capitalistic hellscape, um, if the consumers, which are recipient parents, people that want a baby, if they understand the importance of an accurate medical history of known donors for that reason, and for just their child's emotional well-being, just to have all of these tools in their toolbox if they want them. If parents understand where donor conceived people are coming from and don't feel attacked, then we can actually have regulation happen. Like the consumers have to be the ones to demand better of a really corrupt fertility industry. And so for me, I guess like the way I saw maybe I can help in my own little way is to write a show to try to like spark these conversations, and they're uncomfortable conversations. And I think donor conceived people, we also need to understand and think about where recipient parents are coming from, because like infertility is the most painful. I mean, I can't even imagine. All I know is that being now a 38-year-old woman who is now, I have not found a partner yet, and I really want a child, and I'm now starting to have to like consider whether I'm going to do it on my own or not. I think about parents like my parents who struggle with infertility, and I can't imagine how painful. And if I, when I try to have children, if I end up finding out that I'm infertile, like I can't even imagine. So I really think that it's important for donor conceived people to remember where these recipient parents are coming from, and to have empathy, even though they didn't make the right decision by like not talking to us. I feel like when you're in that kind of a situation, I feel like parents are only thinking about the short-term goal, which is we got to have a baby, and because it's been so hard, and they're not thinking about the long term. And so it's really easy, I think, for us donor conceived people to judge. What is the phrase? You can't judge the past by the standards of the present. It's really easy for us to like throw stones and act like parents are these like evil, selfish assholes now because they didn't think of this. instead of thinking that like they were not maybe in a clear mind at the time, and
Yeah.
they certainly did not have any guidance from doctors and
Right.
people, medical people who should have, those should be the people that are helping parents in this incredibly vulnerable position to have foresight, you know? So anyway, I don't know if the donor conceived community is going to hate me for saying that, but I just say that because I just really feel like it's so important for us to like to join forces with parents, because like I don't think that anything will change unless we figure that out. And I just am a person who believes that like you can't expect empathy unless you give it. And it's really hard for us to expect recipient parents to have empathy for our situations if we don't have empathy for theirs.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't
anyway,
agree more.
that's
And
my rant. That's my rant.
yeah. Well, I'm with you there. Like, even though we're the main characters of the story in so many ways, it's really a family journey, and we can fight the good fight alongside each other. We don't have to be, you know,
Yes.
the lone people in our families, you know, standing up loud and proud and trying to fight for change. It can be a collective effort. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
I totally agree with you there. So, now that the complete picture is a complete project, um, how did it play out as you watched this creative project of yours, you know, be released into the world, and what did that look like?
Well, it's interesting because so it took 5.5 years to write the complete picture. And even now, even though it's done, like I'm literally doing some rewrites as we speak on like two songs. So I mean, I feel like until it someday goes to Broadway, which is the goal, of course. It's going to keep evolving for sure. But one thing um, that is interesting, I guess, is the complete picture evolved as my own story was evolving, just because my perspective as a writer was changing. So like for instance, when I first wrote the complete picture, it was actually pretty close to like an autobiographical kind of story. And she found her donor in act 2, the main character Kira. um, and then as I worked on the piece, I started fictionalizing it and realizing that if I built the story in a certain way, I felt like it would serve the message better and the community better, which is why I decided to make Kira pregnant at the beginning of the show as like that inciting incident that sparks the entire conversation. Recognizing that um, this is not just your problem anymore, not having this information, but like this is going to be your child's problem and their child's and their child's. And so like that was one thing that changed. And then when my own biological father, my donor, rejected any connection, um, after a couple months, I was like, I don't want Kira to find her donor. I think that more often, unfortunately, donor conceived people receive rejection messages or notices, or they receive uh, animosity from you know family that don't want this to be discovered, family of the donors, excuse me. And so I decided that the story changed with that, and that was when I started thinking like I think that this needs to be more about her journey of finding her own peace and piecing together her own identity, and um, how yes, it is important to get this information. That's definitely part of it, um, part of the journey. But like once you get all that information, like I said earlier, you can't control how people are going to respond or behave. You don't know their backgrounds. You don't know their trauma. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. And so to me, it became a much more interesting story for this character to figure out how do I find my own peace? How do I complete my picture on my own without this person? And I mean, I don't want to like give away the ending or anything, but all I'm gonna say is like the ending of the show. It has to do with like the way that you live your life, and um, the way that if you live a life of truth and being transparent and living a life of transparency, and with your own children or your own loved ones, you live a life of transparency. That is something that is in your control, is to like learn from the ways that you've been hurt, um, and to make a different choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was more interesting to me. And it's been really interesting, putting this all out into like this show out into the world. And it's meant so much to me, the response that it's received so far from people who have heard the music or saw the Green Room 42 concert. People who saw we did a reading workshop at Texas State University in September, and it was the first time the entire show was put on in front of an audience. And um, they didn't expect, usually they said like about, less than 100 people would show up to these things, like 60, something like that. And like 100 people showed up to this reading. And it was, we had such good conversation at the talk back afterwards. And it was so cool to see the way that it affected people, both people who had never heard about donor conception or didn't know much about it, also donor conceived people who showed up, people who had struggled with infertility, people who were adopted in the audience, or like NPE, not parent expected, um, people who had lost a father, because Kira, the main character, this is the autobiographical part that definitely stayed in. Kira is essentially, I don't want to say haunted, but like her father, who passed away, has been in her ear her entire life, and so he's an actual character in the show, and he's been talking at her for the past like 20 something years, and she has never acknowledged him. And part of her journey is learning how to acknowledge him, and so it was, cool to hear feedback too from people who had lost parents and whatnot, and just how important it is just to have those hard conversations with our parents, like, because they're not going to be here forever. So yeah, it's been a really cool journey, and we're just trying to have it keep going, trying to get a production to happen.
Yeah, exciting times. So, on the note of conversations, that's kind of where my next question was leading towards. So, the whole idea behind the musical, you said, was sparked from conversations you were having after this one song would be performed. I'm
Hmm.
curious how those conversations then evolved once you put an entire musical production together and really extrapolated on the whole idea a bit more. When you think about the differences between those early conversations that gave you the spark to pursue this fuller project, and then the conversations that happened after the project is done, how do those mesh with each other?
Oh man. um well, I mean, the conversations that we used to have after the show, after band gigs, just based on that one song. It usually was just like an introduction kind of thing. Um, and it usually would lead to like people would send me on like Instagram or Facebook. They would like send me an article. They'd be like, "Oh, I just saw this article. It was talking about this thing, donor conception, you were talking the other day." Or like, "Oh, I just found this documentary that was about like our father or baby God, and it's talking about donor conception that you were just saying." So like, I think it's connected. It was connecting things for people, and it was fun for me to like get messages like that from people. And um, I don't know, like it made me feel good to know that like this one song that I wrote and this conversation that we had made people like kind of like open up and open their eyes and take in all of this other stuff that was happening around them about donor conception. Um, and then since the show, it's been really interesting because I mean, like I said, I wrote this for like 5.5 years, and so like obviously, especially these past 2 years, I've been constantly putting on social media trying to talk, oh, I'm doing this thing about donor conception, and I've been very like outward about or open about my donor conceived story since basically since the pandemic. That was like when I made my first post publicly and was like, I'm a donor conceived person and I want to talk about it. But it's been so interesting because like I have gotten so many messages from people that I know who like found out they were donor conceived out of nowhere, or like, or they found out somebody they know is donor conceived, or I've gotten messages before from people that like want to have a baby on their own, or they want to have a baby with their partner, or they're thinking about donor conception, and they'll ask me like, what's the most like ethical way to go about this, or like, what do you wish your parents had done, or something like that. And I love those conversations because there is an ethical, in my opinion, there is an ethical way to do donor conception. I know not everybody will agree with that. Everybody has their own opinions, but that's what I believe. And so that's been like really, really cool, is seeing how making the show has like sparked conversations to the point where it's like informing people about decisions that they're making, or giving them more information so they can make a more informed decision. So that's been really, really neat. And yeah, it's just like, it's a really cool journey. It's really cool to connect with people about this. And I just feel like even though people don't talk about donor conception very much, or they haven't in the past, I feel like it's so interesting because we all really are connected to it in some way, shape, or form, whether we know it or not.
Right.
So,
And I think it's interesting that even though there's many people who choose not to talk about it, I think most donor conceived people at their core would like to be able to talk about it. And
yeah,
it's finding the right way to do that. And for some people, that means creating a piece of art. In your case, you put a whole performance together, a whole musical. I wrote a book on my experience. So like
yes, you did.
everybody's got their own way of I think putting their voice out there. But I think for those that haven't done that yet, I have to imagine they want to.
Yeah, I could.
It
That's
would
such
only
a
make
good
sense.
point. That's such a good point. I feel like I don't know. When did you learn you were donor conceived again?
Just over 2 years ago. So I was 36 at the time.
36.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like when you first find out, I mean, what's more empowering than community, right?
Right.
And like, and sharing your story. And I feel like when you first find out you're donor conceived, it is hard to find the words, but you do want to share it. Um, Eventually anyway, like it's a part of you, and it's a part that people don't know about yet. So yeah, you want to share in some way, shape, or form. So I feel like any kind of art, like books, like Laura High's comedy that she does, music, theater, like the complete picture, like any kind of ways to get the stories out there, I feel like that's got to be so comforting. I wish back, like when I found out I was donor conceived, I wish that, there was like the forum, like the We Are Donor Conceived forum. I wish that there was art and like different things talking about it, but like no one was talking about it.
Yeah.
But I feel like I would have been like a lot quicker on my journey if like there were outlets so you can feel seen and then inspired to tell your own story and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious where your mom kind of fits into all of this, because you're leaning into being as open as one could possibly be about your whole journey with this all. And obviously, parents are another part of the equation here. How does she factor into what you've created out of all this?
My mom is incredible. I am so lucky that she is so, so supportive of me and my donor conceived journey now. And she's always been so supportive of my art. Me and my mom, and I've told her before that like I do share this and I have her permission to share things like this. But, when she first told me I was donor conceived, like I mentioned earlier, it was like, I was kind of expected to keep it on the hush hush, to keep the secret. And it wasn't something that we talked about. And when I would bring it up every now and then, I did get the sense of like you should, like, don't talk about this. This isn't a good subject. And then I think that as I got older and she started to see how it was impacting me in several ways, and we started having more conversations, she started to come around. And she actually, my mom, I ended up reading that book, Inheritance by Danny Shapiro. That book changed my life, like, completely, because that was the book that made me want to find my donor. And that book, I gave it to my mom, and I asked her, I said, hey, will you please read this for me? It would mean a lot to me. And she read it, and she completely turned around when it came to just conversations about the topic. And just, I feel like that book really made her understand where I was coming from and why it was so important to me to get those answers and also to talk about it. And so my mom's, like, incredible. She's so supportive, completely supports the complete picture. And I mean, like I said, there are elements of the show that are taken from aspects of my life. And one of those parts, the song Another Mountain, I wrote as a tribute to my own parents' story. It's very much taken from my parents' story. And that was a gift I wanted to give my mom, but it's also a gift my mom gave to me, allowing me to put her story to music and to share it with the world. And the amount of messages that I've gotten from parents actually about that particular song, parents who have struggled with infertility, that's probably, like, the song that I've gotten the most response about. And that's, like, I give all thanks to my mom for that, because that's her story, and I'm lucky that she's so supportive. So
yeah, that's beautiful. It's always heartwarming to see when parents are able to evolve in the ways that we have to evolve. We don't have a choice; we have to. But the parents, it's a little bit more up to them if they want to come along for the ride or say, I don't want any part of this. It's always heartwarming to see when the parents say, you know what, I can change too.
Exactly. And like, boomers were not encouraged to talk about their feelings and stuff, like that generation, they were not. It was, privacy was very important, and what other people thought, very important, all of these things. And so, like, boomers anyway, specifically, they're coming from a totally different kind of mindset. So, like, any parents that are able to, like you said, evolve in that kind of a way, it's, like, such a beautiful thing. And I mean, when I think about, like, when I hear stories from donor conceived people who are estranged from their parents, because their parents don't want to have those kind of conversations, and there's that kind of, like, stubbornness and all of that stuff, it just breaks my heart, because you can make a choice at any time to change your mind and open up. And, like, I don't think anybody's ever going to get mad at anyone for evolving,
Yeah. That's a good point. So, okay, we've got your mom's angle covered. You said you have a younger brother?
Mm-hmm.
Younger brother. Okay. So how does he factor into all of this? And I guess he has his own donor conceived story. Has he chosen to be open with his version of things as well, or does he take a more reserved approach with it?
He's definitely way more reserved about it. It didn't. I had a different kind of impact on him, I think, than it did on me. Maybe because he looks a lot like my dad's side of the family. Like, like many people have said, he looks like my dad who raised us when he was younger. So I think that there was a different element just because I felt like I didn't really fit in.
Mm-hmm.
But also, yeah, we're different in the respect that he wasn't as curious about his story. He ended up doing 23andMe, and he actually matched immediately with a sibling, and I was so mad, like, because I was, like, so jealous. and envious because I didn't match with any siblings. And but he just and he has his own donor conceived story, and it's not for me, it's not mine to share.
Yeah.
But he definitely has not like taken as much of an interest in it. So but he's been super respectful of like how I choose to share my story and everything, and I appreciate that. And I try to like I want to keep his privacy. That's actually why specifically I made sure that like Kira in my story didn't have a sibling and is an only child,
Mm-hmm.
is because like I didn't want to create a character. I didn't want to insinuate anything about like my brother's donor conceived story. You know what I
Of
mean? Like
course.
that's his thing.
Yeah.
But I did. Oh, one part of my donor conceived story is I did end up matching with a sibling, and like I have a sister now. So
Right.
that's like,
That's where I was going next. So
yeah,
how
yeah.
did that all play out? And
Oh my
yeah.
god, it's like my happy ending of my
Yeah.
story. I always say that she's my happy ending. Um, Her name's Melissa. I was like sitting. I remember this was like 2 years ago, and I was coming back from a band gig in Connecticut. So I was like in this van, packed with all these dudes squished in this van, strangers. Like we're all hired musicians. I don't even know them. And all of a sudden, my phone pings, and it says, and I have an email, and it says, "You have a sister." I mean, a half sister, but
Right.
I call her my
Yep.
sister. But it says, "You have a half sister. You match with a half sister," and I just was like, "Ooh!" And like all these musicians, they like that I didn't know and they didn't know me. They were like, "Is everything okay?" And I was like, yeah, it's fine. I have a sister," and they were just like so confused. But yeah, so it came completely out of nowhere, and yeah, and we ended up meeting, and we look exactly alike. She was born less than a month after me, Long Island. Um, so yeah, that's been like so cool, is getting to know her. We both showed up the first time. We were both wearing a black sundress and black Converse, and our eyeliner was done the same. And we like totally not planned. It was
Yeah.
bizarre. But yeah, no, she's an awesome person, and it's been a really cool part of it. And she has a daughter as well, so I also got a niece.
All right.
And yeah, it's like my little happy ending with my story. But we always talk about like it's just crazy. Like this is a never-ending telenovela for donor conceived people. We just
Yeah.
like don't know how many siblings we have out there, and that is a crazy thing. And whenever I like talk to people about like when I introduce that I'm a donor conceived person, that's like one of the things I say, and they're like, like that is a crazy thought to not know how many siblings you have, and like that you could just get an email at any time. That's like,
At,
oh,
at any point. And it could also, who knows how long it could extend into. We could be in our 80s or 90s and
yeah,
get an alert that's like, oh, you got another one.
it's a lot. I mean, I know like my situation is not extreme in the respect that like some people have like over 50 siblings, like crazy amount. Like how do you even navigate that? I was going to
Yeah.
ask, so what is your situation? Do you have any siblings that popped up?
I do. Yeah. So there are I think it's 14 in total,
Wow,
two
holy.
of whom were raised by the donor, and we are unaware if they know about this entire situation. So there's a dozen of us who are donor conceived.
Hmm.
And yeah, in our group, there's 6 of us, myself included, who have actually met up in real life, all from Long Island. And most of us are still scattered around the New York area
Hmm.
to this point. So, yeah.
Wow, have you gotten like really close with any of them?
Um, yeah, little by little. I think we've kind of we've all sort of played it cool, like
Yeah.
try not to come on too strong. I think,
Isn't that
but
hilarious? Like that's how we all feel about siblings. It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
don't want
But
to
I
come
mean,
on too strong.
there are definitely there's a couple of them that I can see there's a deeper bond there that I think in time will continue to develop. Um, but yeah, we're very like slow and steady with it all. We're not off to the races. Like I still struggle with the idea of like, do I call this person a brother or a sister? Do I call them a half sibling? Like that's what I call them, is half siblings. Because I feel like those other terms are terms that you kind of have to earn in order to be called that. I know, people are also quick to just jump straight to it. It's a personal choice.
Yeah, the terminology is such a huge thing in our community. Everybody has very, very hardcore opinions about it. But at the end of the day, it is like it's such a personal thing. Like some people like I totally understand what you're saying, that you feel like it's like something that has to be earned.
Yeah.
I like am a different kind of personality, so I was like, "You're my sister!"
Yeah.
Immediately. Like I like welcomed it. Some people call them what, dibblings? That's the cute term I've heard before. And then like even with the term some people, when it comes to the donor, they don't want you to say it's my donor, because technically it's not my donor or our donor. Like it's our parents' donor,
Right.
But like, so some people prefer you say the donor versus my donor.
Interesting. Okay.
But I think that that's such a personal decision too, because like for me it feels like almost dehumanizing for me to just say the donor, so I just say my donor. But like
Right.
I also completely get why they say that, because technically it doesn't make sense, because like he wasn't my donor. But anyway, sorry,
I mean, that's the thing with donor conception, is there's no blueprint for what's right and what's wrong. It's just your
None.
way or another person's way. There's no correct way to go about it all.
Totally.
Okay, so on the note of your sister that you discovered, and I guess factoring in maybe the little bits that you might have been able to pick up on from the donor himself, like, have you seen photos of the donor?
Oh yeah, he's a public figure of a guy.
Okay, so between the donor and your half sister, are there certain kinds of interests or personality traits or aspects of either of them that maybe when you were growing up you had and thought, oh, why am I like this? And now you see it in them and are like, oh, well, that's why. Like, we share this.
I don't know. I can, when it comes to him, I don't know. I go back and forth between calling him my donor and like my biological dad, father, or whatever. But anyway, all I can do is kind of like project or like think of whatever his social media reflects to me about his personality or character. Like I can't really tell. I mean, based on his social media, it seems like he's someone who's very comfortable being in the public eye and like being he seems extroverted to me, and being like, I don't know, entrepreneur kind of type of personality. So that I definitely can see that I probably maybe got from him. But I don't know, like my dad who raised me he was like such a leader, and he was an extrovert in his own right. So who really knows? So yeah, as far as my donor goes, I really don't know what we have in common, just because I don't know him well enough.
Right.
But my sister, we have like similar personalities, but also, I mean, we both took to each other immediately, and we're both very like felt affectionate towards each other immediately. And I would say that my family, like more of the Irish personality, I feel like you have to earn it more. Like I feel like you would have to earn that kind of thing more, whereas me and my sister immediately were like embracing each other and everything. I'm a very like lovey-dovey, touchy-feely kind of person. And I don't think my sister is as much as I am, but we are with each other anyway. She has a creative side as well, even though she is a lady boss, like straight up lady boss leader, like in business and everything. So she has like that part of her personality, but she also has a creative side as well. So we have that in common. And she actually sent once, like, it was like a poet, like a poem thing that she wrote after we met. And it was interesting because she wrote in like similar stanzas that I write when I write poetry. So I thought that that was a really cool thing.
Yeah.
Um,
There's little nuances that I have also found in even just like the way that some of my half siblings text with me, and I read it
yeah,
and I'm like, this kind of sounds like me. Like, I know it's just words on a screen, but like it sounds like me. I don't know.
that's so cool. That's
Yeah.
really
It was
cool.
one of the things I noticed pretty early on. It's just like a very similar way of communicating in writing.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh,
yeah.
that's really neat.
One more question. So I want to back up kind of like towards the beginning of your story when because you had quite some time of between knowing that you were donor conceived and then these DNA testing
Mhm.
companies coming into existence.
Mhm.
When those first popped up on your radar, like the 23andMe's and the Ancestry.coms, was
Mhm.
it an immediate like, oh my God, I have to get this? Like, or did it take a little while before you decided, oh, you know what, maybe it's time to do this?
No, I was like I don't want to say triggered, but uh, I don't know. It felt overwhelming and exhausting to me to like even think about that. I don't know. I just didn't even like consider it. I guess maybe I think maybe I just like wasn't ready to to start with that yet. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. But because I think about that all the time, I'm like, oh, I could have started this journey so much sooner. But honestly, it happened exactly when it was supposed to. I don't
Yeah.
think that I had the like the faculties to deal with it
Yeah.
any sooner than when I started. I think
Mm-hmm.
that 30 was when I had my shit together a lot more to take a dive because I think I knew that like once I opened that can of worms that there was going to be it was going to be a whole thing.
Right.
So I was a hot mess in my 20s. I don't think that I would have had the the bearings to deal with it, to be real with you.
Yeah. I think, well, at least in my case, I'm kind of in the same boat there when, or in the sense that like, I feel like it happened when it was supposed to happen.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people would probably say, oh, I should have known way sooner. But I also think, you know, in the 20s, I didn't really have my shit together either. And who knows
Who
how
does, right?
things could have played out had I discovered this back then. I may have reacted in a much different. Well, I definitely would have reacted in a different way, and it probably would not have been for the better.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
Um,
Totally with you.
all right. Any other closing thoughts that maybe we haven't touched on yet that you think are part of your story or just worth adding to the conversation?
No, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, it's just an ongoing, forever ongoing story, right? All of these donor conceived stories. Yeah, and I hope that I hope that my show is able to like get out there and be able to like reach and help as many people as possible. So
Yeah.
that's where we're at, pretty much. um, yeah, so if anyone wants to follow the journey of the musical, you can follow us at The Complete Picture Musical on Instagram, and we're also on Facebook, and there's thecompletepicturemusical.com as well.
I want to give a big thank you to Erin for sharing her story with us and talking us through how the complete picture came to be. And please do give it a follow and show some support if you can. All of these projects are truly labors of love and are made from the heart. And I think those are the kinds of works that deserve the biggest platforms. If you'd like to follow the podcast on social media, just give a search for Inconceivably Connected to stay updated on what's to come here in the future. And if you're enjoying these episodes, please consider sharing with others and leaving a 5-star rating or review. As always, if you'd like to know more about my own story, just Google Inconceivably Connected, a true story of shocking DNA results and chasing the unknown, and you can order it from a number of different suppliers. The music, editing, and production of the Inconceivably Connected podcast were done by myself, Nick Ludwig. And if you're donor conceived and would like to share your story on the podcast, please fill out the quick form linked in the episode description of any episode that's been released so far. That's all for this week. See you again next Monday.